Okay. That started. 3, 2, 1. That started. I'm going to roll our intro. 2, 1. We had a real treat for you all today, and now we don't.
Well, it's still a treat. It just doesn't have any icing on it. It's a cake, but it has no icing.
It has no icing.
Might not even have that because I can't. Maybe his battery went dead on his phone now.
Okay, we're all here.
Hey, this is Uneducated on Fridays, and we here at Uneducated say to you that you don't have to be educated to think about rationally about topics in the Bible or everyday subjects. You just have to be sincere about finding the truth, and if you do that, you will find it.
You know what else we say?
What?
If you fail to plan to fail.
Yes, and we planned to fail today.
Yeah, we did.
Actually, we did kind of plan some things out, but just for whatever reason.
And I'm not a planner. My dad always told me that.
Oh. Well, you should have listened to your father.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah, but then I don't think you get creativity then. Then I think you're...
Oh.
If you're always rigid, there's just no creativity.
Yeah.
There's just the plan.
That's a great argument for slackers, I think. Yeah, but either way, it's all good. So today we had scheduled to be with us Dr. Stephen Manley on the show, but he is unable to work the video thing again with his computer. So
he's experiencing internet technical difficulties.
And we were sitting here talking, just kind of joking around, saying, if he had someone that was like 20 years old there or under, it would all work out for him. And then all of a sudden he texted me back and he said, the problem is with me. And so he admitted it. So he's fine.
My dad said, and the truth will set you free.
Yeah, it will. Not just the truth alone, though. Here's the problem. You told Matt truth all of his life, and look at this.
Yeah, look at what it produced.
Product.
Yep. This is what you get.
No, you got a good boy.
Let's not get crazy.
Let's not get nuts.
All right, are we going to try and do a phoner?
Yeah, but I think maybe he's like, is he waiting for me to call him maybe? He might be. Just some opening thoughts, though, before I get Dr. Manley on the line. Did you hear the news this week about the Pope deciding to...
Abortions are cool.
Not abortions.
No, gay marriage.
Yeah.
Gay marriage is cool.
Yeah, he has acknowledged that gay couples deserve the right to be a happy family, just like anybody else.
Right, and they what I found interesting was that the Church of Rome feels that we need to get them protections, like government protections.
Yeah.
Like, since when was the church worried about what the government's doing?
Right, exactly.
That was his statement. It was like, we support the gays, and let's get them some laws.
Yeah. What about this whole separation of church and state, Mr. Pope?
Well, that's here.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't even, I don't know, the formality of the statement I thought was really cheesy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did see that this week.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to get Pastor Manley on the phone, and then we're going to break into some, hopefully, really good discussions today. So stay tuned. Yeah.
Hold music.
So I thought that was.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, Pastor Manley, how are you?
I'm so sorry. I have no idea how I am.
That's all right, because we're going to do this just like we did last time. I'm going to just we're going to talk with you on the phone, and you're close enough to the mic here with the phone that people are going to hear you anyway. So we're just happy for you to come on the show and be a part of this with us this morning. We have some thoughts. Did you happen to get my email with the agenda?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So and you still are actually coming on, so you must not have been like too freaked out about it, huh?
Oh.
All right.
Oh, no, I'm not freaked out.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So here's one of the things, Pastor Manley. Matt and I, we try on Fridays to talk about things that are obviously in the scriptures, but practically relate to everyday life. And so as we see things in the news, or we find things out, or we're researching something, or I'm researching something, we try to see what the Bible has to say about and how that might impact people's lives. And I know some of this stuff is kind of irrelevant at the end of the day, and then some of it could be really serious depending on which way it goes in the world. So I kind of wanted to open up and just get your opinion and thoughts and talk to you about, because I think the first time I watched a video of yours was when you were coming to do a revival when I was interning at Warren First Church there in Warren, Ohio. And we had to watch a video of yours preparing for the revival. And you talked in there, you spoke in there from Ephesians, and you talked about this spiritual realm and these entities that were trying to thwart what God wanted to do. And so the spirit realm is becoming more and more of a phenomenon in today's culture. Hollywood has not just made it like sci-fi, but now the conspiracies and all the things in the world are saying that, this kind of stuff's going on in real life. So in today's culture, there seems to be more of a reality of a spirit realm, and yet the Bible still is kind of irrelevant when people say, hey, the Bible has something to say about the spirit realm. Most people are like, that doesn't really have anything to say, but they're interested in Ancient Aliens and the History Channel and all kinds of other things that talk about the spirit realm. So if we were to just dive in, what are your thoughts on the spirit realm and how that interaction works with the world today?
Well, there isn't any question that there is an unseen world, and it is as real as the seen world. In fact, probably more so. And that the relationship between the two has always been something of a mystery, and yet the fact that we don't know everything doesn't mean we don't know something. And biblically, and I think practically as well, when the unseen world, God took the spiritual world, which he is unseen, obviously, and he built a whole physical, visible world. There isn't any question about that. And the purpose of this physical world was to be a platform for the spiritual world. Nothing ever, I'm convinced of this, nothing ever takes place in the physical that there isn't a action from the spiritual playing itself out in the physical. And nothing ever takes place in the physical that isn't some kind of stimulus or motivation or flow from the spiritual world. In other words, things don't just happen physically. In other words, God doesn't just double up his fist and hit you in the mouth. First of all, in this unseen world, down in his gut, he gets mad. And something is going on in the spiritual world that has to play itself out in the physical.
Gotcha.
Of course, the problem is, the way we attack the problem is we attack the physical. Say, hey, let's solve this physical problem. He needs to do some physical discipline, take a cold shower. When the problem, as Jesus said, was, and of course that was the big deal with the Pharisees, they were all wrapped up in the physical. Jesus was all wrapped up in the spiritual. Not that he wasn't interested in the physical, but the physical is the platform for the demonstration of. And when you get into the creation of man, it's really phenomenal. And I know you can't, theologically, you cannot properly say that God has a problem, but if you would go with me on that, if God had a problem, he wanted to be visible to his visible world, but God is invisible. You cannot see him. So God made a man, and the purpose of man was that God would become visible to the entire physical world, which is exactly what Jesus was, the visible God, the invisible God made visible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who we're supposed to be. In other words, God wants to indwell us, and through us bring a visibility to himself. So we're the demonstration of the invisible.
Right. Okay, so then for instance, if we hit like Ephesians chapter 6, which is this idea of so stand therefore and stand strong in the Lord and in the might of his strength and his power, and then he talks to us about our struggle that we face as spiritual. Let's just talk about the need to be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might, because we have politics, we have pandemics, we have gender identity problems, we have riots, we have arguing, with our spouse, all linked to spiritual activity. That you're talking about how physical actions have a spiritual consequence, or spiritual consequence, or spiritual acts, are brought into the physical realm. So is that should we be thinking on a spiritual basis? So when I'm having an argument with my wife, or someone's arguing with me about the pandemic and whether I should wear a mask or not wear a mask, am I supposed to be looking behind every bush for a demon and saying, hey, there's some kind of spiritual battle going on here? Or is that how I should be seeing all this stuff, and I should be acting and reacting from that kind of understanding?
Well, there's probably a yes and a no to that. In other words, if you're in the midst of an argument, would it not be valuable to stop and say that the issue here is not who wins? The issue here is my attitude towards the person, which is in the unseen, which is now demonstrating itself in the physical, in the argument. So the issue is not the fact that, hey, I'm not going to let my face get red and I'm not going to yell. I might conquer that, but the inner attitude, it wouldn't matter what the argument was about. The inner attitude is the issue of how I'm feeling about the individual that I'm talking to and arguing with. So again, it isn't that I'm looking for a demon behind every rock, and obviously a person could do that and really get carried away, but it's this constant awareness of the presence of Jesus in my life, who is wanting to exert himself into the situation in which I find myself.
Gotcha. Okay. So for instance, there are a lot of people talking about, the upcoming election. And of course, that's something that people say you don't talk about, is politics, religion, and all that stuff. But as people are looking at the upcoming election, and there's so much division on so many different issues, and people are struggling, conservative, non-conservative, liberal, all these different factions that take place. As a Christian, do we look at not just the leaders, but the nation and everything that's behind that? Do we have an obligation to really be more, concerned about the spiritual state of everything that's going on, and seeing through the actions of what's going on, what's being portrayed? And discernment is key. It's not just whether somebody's conservative or somebody's liberal. And then you get in a situation where some people are saying to themselves, well, I don't know who to vote for because none of them are any good. How does the Christian deal with that?
Well, there are some fundamentals, it seems to me, in the Ephesians thing. He says, as you stated, we don't fight against flesh and blood. So Trump is not my problem. Biden is not my problem. The political arena is not my problem. The riots in Portland aren't my problem. Those are all physical things. So bring the police in, settle it down. Well, you can do that. And that's the way the world would attack the problem. But that's not really the problem, Paul says. The problem is we're attacking the physical when the problem is in the spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. And we don't, and we do that, and I know our world can't fathom this. It doesn't fathom it. We hardly fathom it, maybe not even in the church, but hey, you don't go after abortion. Hey, let's end abortion. How are you going to do that? Well, we'll pick it. We'll plot. We'll plan. And he says the problem isn't abortion. That's a physical activity. What's the problem? It's in the spiritual realm. If everybody got saved and their life was filled with the love of Jesus, and homes were reestablished, you wouldn't have abortion. So the problem is not in the abortion thing, the activity of abortion. The problem is in the spiritual realm. Also, another factor that's really, I think, really key in all of this is, I don't want this to be a lengthy discourse, but you and I know biblically that God is omnipresent. Okay, right. He's everywhere at one time. Mm-hmm. So he can fill you, and he can fill me at the same time. So I'm down here in Lebanon, you're up there. Hey, God is in the same place. He's here with you, he's with me. That's omnipresence. But the devil is not. Now, he has these demons, I got that. what was it? A third of heaven, third of the angelic hosts went with him. So, hey, he has all these demons. Well, how many demons does he have? Does he have a demon for each person? Well, I doubt that. Are the demons expanding? I don't know. They're not, because they don't give in marriage. We got that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there a demon for each person? I don't know. See, there's all these questions. But there is this demonic movement going on. So, technically, the devil, the actual person of the devil, who is not omnipresent, has probably never worked on you.
Right.
Because he's been busy, but you're not important enough for him to work on.
Yeah, right.
Sorry about that. So you're not important enough for him, but hey, he has demons that are working on that. So he cannot possess you like God can. And yet, there are people all over the world who are possessed with the demonic nature, who are not possessed with a demon or the devil. And the demonic nature is the nature of the devil. Well, what is the nature of devil? Well, we call it carnality. It's self-centeredness.
Mm-hmm.
So here are politicians who are full of themselves, and the whole political arena is for themselves. That is a demonic thing. Now, I'm not saying there's a devil there. I'm not saying they're demon-possessed, although they might be, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they are operating out of a selfish motive, which is a demonic nature. And that's what we're fighting. So I'm looking at the candidates, I'm looking at the political scene, and I'm saying, who is it that doesn't care about himself? Who is it that says, hey, I want to pour my life out for the USA? Who is that? Who's that person? That's the one.
Gotcha.
Because that's not a demonic nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of Jesus.
Right. Okay.
Now, that filters into the church as well. See, and I don't know how technical you want to get on this, but hey, down at the church, we've got two people mad at each other on the board. So what do? We move into crisis management. How do we handle this? Personality types we deal with, and there's a personality clash we deal with. See, we don't get on our knees and say, "Oh God, intervene in behalf." See, we don't go after it from the spiritual realm. We go after it from a psychological, physical realm.
Mm-hmm. So literally then, from a demonic standpoint, although demons may not be possessing some of these politicians or different people, the demonic realm may be setting all these things up, like in C.S. Lewis's book, The Screw Tape Letters, things like people watching YouTube videos more than they're on their knees praying. Would that be a good assessment or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And he does that to all of us all the time.
Right.
Because our selfishness kicks in, and we operate out of his nature, and he doesn't have to possess us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting to me that I've been finding over the last year or two that I watch a lot of different spiritual discussions, debates, and that's all good oftentimes. But I find myself sometimes I'm watching so many things on YouTube that are spiritual in content, other people's opinions or thoughts on scriptures and those kind of things. But I'm spending less time sometimes in prayer or personal things that I think to myself, could that very well be demonic influence just trying to get me not to spend more time alone with God and more time just listening to other people rant and talk about stuff?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that is a good point. And he's sneaky. In other words, we're dealing, of course, with the charismatic influence, the miracle influence.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, who's against miracles? I'm not against miracles, man.
Right.
Hey, I'm for miracles. I hope you get one. I hope I have a dozen. So everybody's for miracles. But when you get focused on miracles instead of him, then you have, and when you begin to want to use miracles for your own self-benefit and your own pride and ego.
Right.
Hey, I'm dealing right now with Matthew chapter 6 about the righteous deeds, and the whole premise is when you do righteous deeds for the purpose of the applause of men or for the purpose of making your own self feel good. That's all you get.
Nice.
God is not involved.
Yeah.
Wow. So when I do something because, well, I just feel better when I do it, I'm doing it for myself, and God isn't involved. And that's a demonic nature.
Yeah. Back to the root of selfishness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to, real quick, we're going to kind of jump into another thought here. It's kind of on the same topic. But if there are people out there today watching and, again, you have prayer requests or anything like that, please make sure you comment. Let us know so we can be praying for you and with you. But the other thing is, since Pastor Manley is on with us, if you have questions or anything, just comment, and we'll try to get to those sometime before we're done here as best we can. So one of the things, Pastor Manley, that I talked to you about, it's probably been several years now. You were up here, and I think we were on a walk somewhere. My wife and I, we decided to go, and we all went for a walk somewhere, and you and I were talking, and I'd ask you about marriage. And I don't know how you want to, comment on this and stuff, but this is kind of a spiritual thing, and this is kind of a segue into the next thing I want to talk about, because in today's world, marriage is something that's not held in such high esteem anymore. It's under attack in a lot of different ways. But one of the things that have been going on in the church and in theology for years is this idea that when we get to heaven, we won't be married anymore because of the one statement in the Gospels that says, we'll be like the angels, not given in marriage or taken in marriage. Can you speak to that just a little bit? Because we talked about that, and I got the sense that maybe there's a possibility that I could be with April for all of eternity in a relationship that's better than anything I could have ever experienced here on earth. And yet most people in the church are being taught that once you go to heaven, you pretty much won't see if you see your spouse, it won't be like that, and you'll kind of be done for all of eternity, and you'll just be standing there worshiping God forever, and nobody's really going to, be in relationship with each other and doing the things like we do
like
today.
brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
we can't.
Kind of like brothers and sisters. Yeah. Right. Can you speak to that at all, or do you have any ideas or thoughts on that?
Well, there's several things that are really strong in making a decision regarding that. One is the fact that in all of creation, all of creation, and maybe you want to argue outside of the only exception would be the angels, and I don't know. I don't know about that. But in all of creation that we know of, in our world, sexuality is present. Male and female, feminine and masculine is present everywhere. It's even in plumbing.
Yeah, right.
That's true.
Right.
Good point.
We think in terms. It's in the plant life. It's in everywhere you go. You got male and female, feminine and masculine, animals everywhere you go. Now, can you conceive that God would take something as basic as that he put in all of His creation, and suddenly you and I would die and it would be gone? I just can't. That just doesn't make any sense. Now, follow that through. Okay, my wife is feminine, and she is so feminine that it influences everything she does. Well, I'm masculine, and it influences everything I do. The way I dress, the whiskers on my chin, the way I drive, the way I approach life, the way I think, the way I handle my problems, the role I play, my personality, everything about me is affected by my masculinity and is affected in her by her femininity. Now, if my wife dies, all of a sudden her femininity is removed. Well, what would she be, brother? That is such an intricate, intergrained part of her existence, shaping the very essence of her personality. See, I'm arguing the fact that I cannot I cannot. I'm not bringing the Bible into this. I cannot logically conceive how that could be so important in the operation of our lives and forming who we are, and suddenly just be eliminated. Well, my wife wouldn't know who she is if she wouldn't be feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying in heaven there's going to be masculinity and femininity.
Okay.
Now, that's one basic premise. The other basic premise is in the passage, and you already mentioned it, Jesus makes this statement, for in the resurrection they neither marry or are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. That, outside of that being quoted again in Mark, is the only place in the scriptures that thing shows up.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot, you really are in danger when you base a whole theological premise on one statement. I mean, and then number two, that passage from verse 23 down through verse 33 is not about marriage. It's not about the angels of God in heaven. It's not about that. Jesus drew that in one little statement, but the purpose of the passage is not the context, the reason the passage is there. What the passage is trying to say is not to make a statement about our sexuality in heaven.
Okay.
So when you take and bring that into this and say, oh, he's talking about, well, no, he's not. And of course we do that a lot in the scriptures. We inject something into a passage that's not there because he isn't even talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that here, you're wrong. So what is the passage about? The passage is about the resurrection. And Jesus says two things to them, absolutely strong. He says, you made up this dumb little story about a guy marrying a gal, and he dies, and she marries his brother, and he dies, and she marries, and finally all seven of them died, and she dies too, which is not surprising after seven of them. But anyhow, here he says, you made up this stupid little story, and there's two things. You are mistaken, he says, you are mistaken on 2 points. Number one, you do not know the scriptures. The argument was about the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
See, that was what they were after. They didn't believe in the resurrection. They're Sadducees. So he says, you don't know the scriptures, or you wouldn't say that. In fact, he's going to go on and quote to them that, have you not read in your scriptures that God said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So the scriptures tells you that there is a resurrection. That's number one. You don't know the scriptures, nor do you know the power of God. See, you have underestimated the wonder of who God is. Now, bring that into our sexuality. If sexuality is such an intricate part of the scriptural creation of who we are, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, what about the power of God? Everything that we are involved in now is a shadow, the scripture says, of what is to come. The real thing is yet to come. We live in the shadows. So if this is a shadow,
right.
If marriage, see, just irritates me. When we talk about marriage, we think of sex.
Right.
So what we're dealing with here is, well, who am I going to have sex with in heaven? What if sex is a shadow of something else?
Wow. Yeah.
And as great as sexual experience is, what does God have planned in this realm for the relationship between me and my wife in heaven? I have no idea, man.
Right.
This is ugly of what we see. We think we live and breathe and die in 80 years down here in our little realm, thinking this is so great and we can't turn loose of it, and yet we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into and what we're going to be like a million years from now. And I think marriage is involved in that, but I don't know how. I don't know what. I can't describe it.
Yeah.
I only know that we don't underestimate the power of God on this thing.
Right.
So that's where I stand in that whole thing.
Okay, and I've thought about that too. This is what doesn't make sense to me. Why would God want me to learn how to love April as Christ loved the church, if then when I get to heaven, I don't ever have to worry about loving her anymore? Like, that continual relationship growing and being greater than it ever was here on earth. Like, to me, that has always kind of boggled my mind, or been kind of
doesn't make sense, does it?
No, no. Because I think about Matt. Matt's got a comment, because I think Matt's thinking, seriously, I got to be with my wife for all of eternity? Is that what you're?
No, I'm wondering who would wash my socks in heaven.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
I mean, somebody's got to be around to take care of me.
That may encourage you not to go there, man.
Well, Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess I haven't put this much thought into this subject. No, it is something to ponder. You're gonna have to give me a week to think about it.
Okay, we'll give you a week.
Give me a week to think about it.
All right.
I mean, obviously everything that we're doing here. But I mean, would that not mean that if I'm a plumber on earth, am I gonna be a plumber in heaven? Yeah. Because I'm learning my trade here on earth, or to be a tradesman versus a businessman versus a pastor. So are you going to be in the clergy in heaven?
Yeah.
Like,
I hope not. I kind of want to be part of military stuff, but that's just me. I kind of want to.
There will be bathrooms in heaven.
There will be bathrooms in heaven?
Well, absolutely. How could there not be? Jesus, in his resurrected form, ate.
Well, this is true.
That's true.
It
would have to be eliminated somehow, right?
Wouldn't there?
Yeah. Well, okay, so this takes me back, Pastor Manley, to the Garden of Eden then, because for some reason people think in the Garden of Eden, that everything was totally different. So we could eat whatever we want. We could, and we just never had to worry about that. But obviously, the body worked the same then as it does now, even in a fallen, sinful nature, right? And if we were going to live forever, if that's true, the plan was for us to live together with God forever in that state. Then isn't the new Jerusalem, when our bodies are glorified, going to be in that same state, that we will be eating and drinking and going to the bathroom and all those things?
Yeah, and see, you cannot approach eternity with a non-physical view, which brings us back to the physical element. The physical exists forever. Jesus was physically raised from the dead. I mean, we pound that. Mm-hmm. He was physically ascended. He physically sat down at the right hand of the Father. Hey, new body, transformed body. Hey, pass through the walls, sit down at the table and ate. All of that, no problem. I don't understand any of it. But except I've watched Star Trek. But outside of that, you don't understand it. Okay, so it's beyond us. And there's a dimensional thing here. You can get into the dimension. We're moving into a different dimension.
Right.
But I don't know what that dimension is. But it's still a physical body.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to jump in here so that David Miller knows, because he's put this in both places, as if I'm not paying attention.
Okay.
He says, please factor in the concept of the church as the bride of Christ. Marriage in heaven may be the union of us to Christ.
Well, I've been struggling a lot. Maybe you guys can help me. I've been struggling some, maybe not struggle in the word, but I've been contemplating, expanding in my thinking about these illustrations, the biblical illustrations of our intimacy with Jesus. For instance, one of them is, I'm a son of God. Well, you know that an illustration doesn't stand on all four. You can't press it. It's not exact. In other words, if I'm going to say, if you know what a window is, but you don't know what a door is. So I'm trying to describe a door by using the illustration of a window. It's an entrance into the wall. It's an entrance into the house. It's in a wall. But a window is not a door in the final analysis. You may use it as an illustration, but it's not a door. Right. Okay, so I'm a son of God. That's an illustration. In other words, if you're going to press that and say, oh, if I'm a son of God, oh, God is my father. Well, who's your mother?
Right.
See, you can't press it.
Right.
You can't, it doesn't stand on all four. So it's a biblical approach to saying, and that's where you get whole theologies messed up, because once I'm born again, I can't be unborn. Well, the birth thing is an illustration that doesn't stand on all four. So it's trying to describe an intimate relationship with God. Now, the bride and the bridegroom, I'm his bride, which really, offends my masculinity. But let's see. But anyhow, it's an illustration trying to depict the kind of intimacy that we have, that we're going to have, and that we have with God. But it isn't. I'm not his bride. So anyhow, when you come to the scriptures, if you say, well, what is the one illustration, which is not the right word, but what is the one factor that is exact? Well, it's Jesus. Biblically, it's Jesus. God became man, and in becoming totally like we are, he was filled with the Spirit, and Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. So if you want to know the exact measurements, the exact essence of what it is to be in intimacy with God that you and I are going to experience, it's exactly what Jesus had. Now, the sonship is does it stand on all four? And I am the vine, you are the branch. That's a good illustration. And who would knock it? I wouldn't. But it doesn't stand on all four. None of the parables stand on all four. So this when you begin to press then into the sexuality, into the bride and the bridegroom, and what that's going to be like in heaven, we have no idea. It's an illustration.
Right. Because obviously when he said you're the vine, I'm the branch, he didn't mean we're an actual vine.
No.
And yet when we say bride and bridegroom, we want to believe that we're a bride, but
Yeah.
like you said, it's an illustration. Okay. Makes sense.
And you get that from the Old Testament. God called Israel his wife, which has none. In fact, he said, "You played the harlot." Well, they didn't play the harlot like a wife would commit adultery.
Right.
They committed adultery in the spiritual realm of worshiping Baal. In fact, God said, and this is really interesting, God said, I divorced Israel. So God got a divorce. So don't criticize me if I get one.
Is that in the plans, Pastor Manley, or no?
In the plans.
I think it was,
Oh, in my plans.
Yeah, your plans.
Yeah, it's too late, brother. I've been 58 years now. So
Wow.
it's late.
Wow.
It is what it is.
58 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's that illustration factor. I don't know why. That only dawned on me. I only began to deal with that this month. But that idea really helps me.
all
And
right.
the
So
fact
what
that
are
Jesus is the one who is the perfect essence of what this is.
Gotcha.
what are some other things then that made you think about this that you're churning on? Was it specifically what was the example you used?
Marriage?
No, the stories.
Parables?
The parables. Was it specifically the parables, or was it other things? Because it's interesting. I would say over the past month and a half, we've been dealing with what's imagery and what is, looking at the Bible with a fresh set of eyes, saying, okay, that's clearly imagery. We're doing that specifically in Revelation right now. And instead of trying to take Revelation very literally, going, okay, this is obviously imagery, and we really don't know what the heck's going on there.
You're exactly right. I mean, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Is there actually going to be a supper, and are we actually going to eat pizza? See, I don't know. I just have no idea. But it's interesting, and again, we're talking in a realm that really doesn't matter. in some sense, because figuring it out isn't going to change it. If we don't know what it is going to be what it is, and it's going to be greater than anything we've ever thought. But the whole idea of see, some people think that that God is building a city, and it's a cube, and that thing is going to come right down here, and there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, which means he's going to redo, as he did in the original creation, he's going to redo this whole planet, and that the city of Jerusalem, the new city, the new celestial city, is going to come right down. We'll go in and out of it from the earth, and we'll reign here on earth. So we'll have our houses just like we always do. I'll probably be mayor of Lebanon, reigning over Lebanon, and we'll be functioning just like we're functioning now, going to bed at night, getting up in the morning, and working and doing our plumbing and doing without sin, which was what the Garden of Eden was all about. Tend the garden, take care of the animals. Wow, I don't know. I just don't know.
It's a great concept, because, to be quite honest, I think if most people were honest, if they had a really good day, they would say, hey, this thing called life isn't too bad of a gig, but because of sin and everything, I think some people go, man, I couldn't do this for 500 years or 600 years. But when you're living in a realm where Christ is the one who's the light, and he is illuminating everything, and sin is now no longer there, that might be a really awesome place to be for all of eternity, right?
And the significance of, press it a little further, that again, and I say this all the time, but your fingerprints are different than anybody else's. Your DNA is different. You don't look like anybody else. See, somebody went to a lot of trouble to design you as a unique individual so that God could live within you. God did that, obviously, designed you as a unique individual, so he could live within you and bring about a revelation of himself through you, a visibility of himself through you that nobody else could ever give. So you have overwhelming significance in the eternal plan of God, of what he's putting together for the next billion years.
Well, and that flows into not just me, but each and every one of us then. That gives each and every one of us that unique ability.
Yes, and we matter to him, and we are an intricate part of the plan. So the plan is big. So this isn't just go to heaven and play a harp for the rest of your life. If that's true, I'm not going.
That sounds boring.
Yes, it does. I'm not going. But if you tell me that sin is going to be gone, and I'm going to be pastoring a church, and we're all going to come and worship and hunger and get into the scriptures and grow and know Christ more, and this whole thing is going to just build, and it's going to be on a whole new, I could go for that.
Well, man, I might not go then if that's the case. I was kind of into the harp thing.
Well, again, this goes to you want to be in the military.
I wanted to be in the military.
You're like, I don't want to be stuck with this job forever.
Yeah. You think there's a possibility, Pastor Manley, that he might change, job, like we could change job things, like when we get there, you think, or not? Job titles?
I don't know how you could have military if there's no sin. Why would you need military?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, you really, I think
That's
you
true.
need to
See,
examine
that was a carnal, self-centered idea of, hey, I want to be in the military so I can push you around.
I just wanted to do something physical. If I want to get down to it, I don't. Sometimes I think to the Lord, I know He knows what He's doing, but because my study time causes me to sit so much, and I'm such a, I thrive on physical stuff. So now a lot of times I'll put earbuds in and listen to the Bible while I'm out raking leaves or something like that, just because I can't stand to sit. So I think I thought military would give me the option, to do some physical stuff. But maybe I could chop wood for fireplaces and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Might be good.
So we got David said, well then, what does the bride of Christ concept signify or shadow? And then he said the marriage supper is going to happen, the ultimate consummation of Christ in the church in the future event. And my dad says you can guard the gates.
Oh, okay. So Pastor Manley, the comment or the question is that obviously it says in Revelation 19 there that the marriage supper of the Lamb is going to be the consummation there. It's going to happen. So
what does the bride of Christ? What does it shadow?
Yeah. So what would be the shadow then of the bride of Christ if you were to try and work that illustration out?
Yeah, well, see, I have, number one, I have no problem with it happening. But you don't know what the menu is.
Gotcha.
See, what's the details of it?
Mm-hmm.
I got into this as well in my thought process. God spent 6 days creating everything that we just stand around and look at. I mean, our mouth is open, the sunset, the mountains, the wild. We look at and the intricate involvement of the flexing of your hand, the bones, and all of all the details. God, it took him 6 days, and he built everything. He created everything that we know. You know how long it took him to bring about redemption? I mean, this goes from Adam down through Moses, down through Abraham, down through Moses, down through the prophets, 400 years in the intertestamental period, the Gospels. He spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years bringing about redemption.
Gotcha.
Now, if he did 6 days, everything that we just, wow, we're blown away by what he did in 6 days, and it took him hundreds of years to bring about this relationship, this new relationship of the fullness of the Spirit. What must it really be like? I mean, in contrast of 6 days and the creation of the world, and how phenomenal it is, if he spent hundreds of years. See, I think that this thing is so big and so phenomenal. The plans of God for our lives. I mean, I can hardly wait to die.
Yeah, right. And if I could just say this too, and this is something that you always allude to and talk a lot about, the language or the wording that you use. If you were to look at the illustration of the bridegroom and the bride, it's this picture of merger, or this picture of total intimacy, where
Yes.
we are learning, or we are becoming that here on earth, but then maybe in that final marriage supper, that glorification atmosphere, that state, that is where that fullness then comes to fruition there in that marriage supper of the Lamb. So this intimacy that we're working on here on earth with the Spirit of God in us, that God is doing in us and through us, and this merger that's happening where we don't have a will of our own anymore. It's His will. We are dead to Christ. No longer do we live, but Christ lives in us, and the life we live is lived by faith in Him that loved us and gave Himself up for us. And that one that gave Himself up for us, the bridegroom, is when we finally see Him face to face, and that all comes to fruition. Does that sound like maybe a good idea of how to kind of play out that illustration?
That's beautiful, and of course that fits. I mean, the courtship time, the dating time, you're getting to know the whole, and you're engaged, and then finally there comes the day, and you move into a new level of intimacy. So is that we're in the courtship, we're the bride, and he's the bridegroom, but we haven't been married yet, and it's the marriage supper of the Lamb, the culmination of the marriage.
Interesting.
Well, then on a similar topic too, I once watched a Ken Ham message. I thought it was a pretty interesting point. He said, this reflects on what you were saying about how He created everything here and how beautiful it is, and on and on. And we do think those things, and we do know that what we have here is a blessing. But he said, if we're looking at the earth the way that it is now, and we're sitting, on a mountainside on a dead tree, saying how wonderful the sunset is. He goes, you're sitting on a dead tree. What's really here is a sin-fallen world, and everything that we see, we see death. So, for crying out loud, we're sitting on an expired tree. We do not know, to your point, this is a continuation, we really do not know how good it was to be for us, and what the plans are in the future, and how wonderful they will be. And if we're in love with, if we can so easily fall in love with the dead parts here, how magnificent must it be when we'll see everything alive and full of life and no death available.
Great insight. Yeah, I agree 100%. And it just pushes us. And Sunday night, I just yelled at the teenagers, you just don't want to miss this. See this?
Right.
You just don't want to miss. Don't blow this for some 50-cent experience, some deal in a back seat of a car. I mean, just don't do that.
Right.
This is too big.
Right.
Just have deep.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if I could approach one more thought here, and then we'll let you go for the day, and it's this. I just wanted to get your just your thoughts on this. I've stumbled upon a growing number of people who are really getting intrigued by psychedelic drugs, DMT, mushrooms, even marijuana has become kind of this gateway to the spiritual realm.
With the idea that they're safe and natural and from the earth.
Yes.
Like why wouldn't we be allowed to have this experience?
Right. And so what's happening? So one particular author, Brian Murarskew, he has a new book out called The Immortality Key. And I still have yet to grab a hold of that, a copy of that, to read that. But he claims that in his 12 years of research that he gives evidence to the suppression of women and the drugged Eucharist, meaning that when the early Christians were having communion, there was actually mushrooms or certain types of herbs that they were putting into there, and it was causing people to have these out-of-body experiences. So the idea here is that Christianity needs to either accept this idea, because science is starting to accept it. They've done studies in 2006 or 2016 at Johns Hopkins trying to use some of these psychedelic drugs on people that have depression and post-traumatic stress and these things, and supposedly they're finding good results. And so they're saying Christianity needs to get on the bandwagon, because experiencing the other realm, which they believe people who have experienced this stuff on these certain chemicals and these drugs say that they are not hallucinating. Like if if Matt and I were to take the same hallucinogenic drug, they're saying that Matt would not hallucinate pink elephants and I would hallucinate green rabbits. We would both see the same exact thing, which is really odd, because that was really a strong argument for the disciples. People used to say, well, the disciples were just hallucinating. And of course, the scholars and the apologetic people, they would come back and they would say, no, because you don't hallucinate the same exact thing. Everybody hallucinates differently. Well, now this group of people are saying, no, they're hallucinating the same thing, and so they're starting to believe that they're not hallucinating. They're actually in another realm.
They're opening up other dimensions.
Yeah, and so I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because this goes back to our earlier discussion on the spirit realm and how we get into that and how that can be opened up and how that works between spirit and physical. And then I kind of wanted your thoughts, because we're also living in a culture where they're starting to say, listen, the guy who opens up a book, an ancient book, and teaches from it is not going to be the expert anymore. It's going to be the person who takes something and experiences the realm that you're talking about from a book. Any thoughts on that?
My. Well, yeah. See, the immediate wall, the immediate hurdle, the immediate blockade for that whole thought process is that it substitutes something for the essence of Jesus. And you can't do that, man.
Right.
You cannot. The way to the Father is Jesus. I am the way. And when you say, well, marijuana and Jesus, you've just ruined it. And of course, we've done that in Christianity. It's baptism in Jesus. It's communion in Jesus. No, it's not. I don't care whether you're ever baptized or not. You can experience the fullness of Jesus and this other realm. And Jesus is the essence. See, I would consider that whole thing a trick, a substitute, a get me off. And of course, that's, and I know there's a lot of opinion on this 1 Corinthians thing and the gift of tongues and all the gifts. But he is so strong on that. When you study the culture, they, as you know, they participated in the pagan worship, and the pagan worship had drugs and sexuality and all of this stuff in it. And the more you could lose yourself, the more you could be out of yourself, the more you could get out of body into, and drugs would help you do that, the more spiritual you were. So the Corinthian church wanted to drag that into the church. And Paul says, no, don't do that. And I put this, what you're talking about, in that, because again, it's a substitute for the person of Jesus. That my whole spiritual life is only safe because somehow it's in Christ that I experience all of this. It's in the person of Jesus.
Yeah. Now you have worked for years with a lot of people with addiction issues and things of that nature. Have you ever had people talk to you about having experiences, and have you had to talk to them about, what the Word of God says and maybe what they experienced, and not necessarily having to deny what they experienced, but maybe them even coming to the conclusion that, hey, this wasn't just a spiritual experience. There was it was a demonic thing that was happening. Or have you not had any experience with that or anything to say to that?
Well, somewhat. But see, you if a person comes to you and says, I had this vision, or was it a dream? I don't know, but I had this vision where God came, and this is what happened, and this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. You're hard-pressed to ever convince that individual that wasn't God. That was too much pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You can't see when a person says to you, God spoke to me and said this. Man, that's the final word. God said it. I mean, that ends it. That ends the discussion.
Right.
That's the difficulty that you run into with this kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And that's what we're running into in this new movement in the evangelical church, which isn't really a new movement. It's just a reshaping of the old charismatic movement of, hey, I'm entering into this la-la world where there's all of this I'm seeing visions and God is speaking to me and all of this is happening. And I know God speaks to people. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm not knocking the gifts. I'm not knocking miracles. I believe in all of that. But when you take Jesus out of the heart of it, man, you got problems. Because you get off. You get off, brother.
Right. And it goes back to the same root that you talked about earlier, and that's selfishness. So
yes, a superiority begins to build.
Right.
See, I've got something you don't have.
Right. Because more and more I see people, like, they're not satisfied with just their relationship with Jesus. It's like, well, I saw something on a church doing something on TV, or the church down the street is having this great thing happening over there, and I got to be there. And it's so all of a sudden it's about how I feel and where I need to be and what I want, as opposed to just being the vessel of Jesus and just letting Jesus work through your life wherever you're at.
Yep. Amen, brother.
So, okay, so with that, so do you see any kind of an issue? Do you see the church? I mean, I know this might be some of it's new, but like I think what you said is it's just repackaged, because even Paul dealt with this kind of thing where people were trying to use drugs. So do you think the church just continues to beat the drum or the message that, hey, apart from Jesus, I don't care what kind of drugs you're taking, I don't care what you're doing, if you're not going to talk to me about the person of Jesus and the fact that God became flesh and dwelled among us and died and rose again physically, and he is our redemption, he is our life, then none of that other stuff really matters. And so that's kind of the message that you keep at, and somehow that message is going to have to convince people that it's not really a good idea to take psychedelic drugs to try and get into the other realm.
Paul said, I have known nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Jesus Christ and him crucified plus marijuana. It wasn't. That's all. This is all I've known. This is all I preach to you about, because this is all there is. And anything outside of that is outside the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Matt, you have any other thoughts?
Nope. I think we've done a lot of good work here today.
Yeah. We haven't done squat, I don't think.
No, I know.
Yeah. Hopefully Jesus
I did finish this pot of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know,
that was your marijuana. I got it.
Yeah.
yeah, he just got it.
Oh.
The drug of choice.
Yeah.
Just threw me right under the bus.
Well, just so everyone knows, my choice is green tea, which is a Chinese herbal remedy for everything.
Yes.
And I think that's Eastern Buddhism, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. You won't get the coronavirus.
No, not with the antioxidants that are in green tea. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You're right. So how have you been? You and your family and your congregation, is everybody well? With coronavirus staying at bay with you guys? Everybody doing good?
Yeah, really, it is. Of course, all of most of our people that come to our church are part of the program. You know, the guys coming out of jail and so forth, and they live together anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't do mass. We just all come on Sunday morning. We don't do social distancing, because again, they're all together anyway. So we've got, and the worst thing in the world for an addict is isolation.
Right.
So we had to come back together. We just couldn't survive.
Right.
Our group could not survive in the segregated aspect of it. So we're doing well, and revivals are coming back. I just got back from a revival, so revivals are coming back because people are saying all over, we want to get back to normal. This is awful.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go on like this.
Yeah.
And I think Trump is right in the fact that we can't shut her down. We can't shut this down again. That would be more drastic than the cure would be worse than the disease.
Right. Right.
So we got to be careful. I understand and all that. So.
Right.
But we're doing well, thank you.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. It's really good to talk with you and to get your viewpoints on a lot of this stuff. And it always helps me. I kind of think that we need to have some kind of ministry link between us, because you always seem to bring me back to normal. I start to get out there a little bit, and then you kind of speak some words that kind of help me go, okay, yeah, I need to kind of pull back on that a little bit or think a little more on that. So I really appreciate your ministry and everything that you do. So
thanks for letting me be a part of it, sir.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem. Matt, was there any more questions or thoughts on there?
No, I think it was a fun day, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the video. Maybe we'll get this worked out sometime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're still not saying it couldn't be on our end, because we are just kind of a couple dum-dums with expensive equipment, floating around. Yeah. So we're going to make sure it's not on our end either.
Well, it definitely was on my end here. I came to the church, but I couldn't even get online. I'm not even online, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I mentioned to Matt that might be good is, can you find a person that's under the age of 20 to come with you next time?
Yeah, you young whippersnappers.
Uh-huh.
All right, sir. Well, hey, you have a great weekend and great next week, and we appreciate you.
Blessings on you all.
All right,
All right,
thanks.
have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And there he goes. And that'll be that'd be our hour.
That was our hour.
We had Dave Miller said, and rim shot. I think that was for the coffee joke or something we said right in there.
Oh, rim shot?
Yeah, ba-dum-bum, like it's a
Gotcha.
joke. And Carol was jumping in there with the church has to stand against fake high with drugs and opens the door for the enemy.
Yeah.
So, which is both true points.
Yeah, and that's the issue that I take, that he was talking about, and so that's where I'm like trying to learn to draw the line, is because I don't know that you want to give more attention to something like this than needs be. However, if mainstream people are talking about this and it's starting to happen, it's starting to really dampen at least I would feel like it's starting to dampen the effectiveness of the people that preach the gospel. However, that's where I think faith comes in, because we have to believe that God's way of doing this over the last several thousand years has never failed.
Well,
and it's not going to fail
I
now.
guess I see this as a pendulum thing, okay? So we are, I think we're coming to the lowest of the low of, being in love with ourselves. And I'm almost wondering if there's some kind of correlation with interdimensional interactivity being allowed. Mm-hmm. Like, as God's people wane, so the God of this world isn't pushed back. Mm-hmm. And then as there's revival and the word of God gets out there and more believers come online,
right,
it gets pushed back.
Yeah.
And so you don't hear these things, and
right,
these things don't go on as much. But you can see through through the whole Bible, it's up, down, up, down, up,
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Times of very high satanic bad activity, and then times where it's peaceful, tranquil, and God is in more control, or better represented by His people on earth.
Right. And just to follow that up too, I think it's pretty interesting that there is a peace and a tranquility that can come even in the midst of all that. So if us as Christians find ourselves in a world where spiritual attacks and demonic activity is at a high, then we can have tranquility and peace in our own homes and our own lives, because of the fact, like Manley said, that we have made Christ our Lord,
right?
And He is living in us, and we're crucified. That's it. We don't live for that stuff anyway. So
then the other thing that he said, talking about the fingerprints in our individuality, mm-hmm, and that we each get to become like an echo chamber for God in our own way. I was thinking that takes us back to our talks about dark energy and how He's omnipresent. Like, is there a better way to express His omnipresence and His infinity for being everywhere other than being able to inhabit all of our lives individually in our own ways with our own characteristics? I just think, right, there's 7 billion people on this planet that, right, if they all accepted Christ, He could inhabit,
right,
and show His light through in 7.6 billion different ways.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that's just present 7 billion.
Yeah.
But you go back in time and you go
through
to the future,
all the people that have existed.
Yeah.
No, that's a mind-blowing thought.
Yeah.
How, like, maybe that, so then carry that to where we started. That's what heaven will look like.
Right.
We're going to be people. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing people things,
right,
and having glorified bodies and all of these things. But that's going to be a population of people that loved Him, do love Him, are loving Him,
right,
presently and active.
Yeah.
That it'll be the picture of what He wanted at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. And I like your dad's thought about me being one of the guards at the doors. I'm just wondering, because guards have to stand, and I'd like to move.
What if you're taking an attack, though?
Well, yeah, but how often is it going to be attacked?
What are we being attacked by, and why do there need to be guards?
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about this.
We've talked about that. But I'm just wondering if then they wouldn't at least supply me with a mirror. You know that new workout thing that you put on your wall? It's called the mirror.
Oh, yes.
And you can download YouTube videos.
So
and
you're
going to
be guarding, but you're going to be distracted by the mirror?
Yeah, but I figure by then you'll be able to chew gum and walk at the same time, as Joe Biden says. You should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So by the time we get there, we should be good.
My dad makes the comment, we can, and I would emphasize to my dad, if you can say we can what, because we move on. But he said we can, and the Lord gave us the tools, Ephesians 6:13 through 18. What were we talking about?
We can survive the coronavirus by drinking green tea.
And coffee.
Yeah. And coffee actually has antioxidants in it, too. People don't realize that.
Well, like you said, green tea is the juice of females and Asians. Coffee is kind of like the juice for red-blooded American males.
Yeah. So I'm now female
Effeminate.
Asian.
Yeah.
Female Asian. Well, then I probably shouldn't be 6 foot tall.
Racist and offensive and inappropriate all in one statement.
Yeah, that's great.
It really is. Well, it's the American way.
Yeah, and thankfully it wasn't so bad that people would go, "Oh, that was horrible."
No, this is how people used to talk. Come on.
Yeah, and it's a kind way.
Yeah.
It's a kind way just to let people know that they're different. Everybody's different. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Are we out of this?
we are. You guys have a great weekend. If you are looking for a place to worship, we are here on Sundays, 11 o'clock, for worship service, or you can catch us online at anycommunity.org, live stream there, or you can catch us on our YouTube channel, Northeast, the Northeast Tube, or Facebook, our NEC Facebook channel.
And just really quickly, Jamie Fiscus says, thanks, guys. These chats really make you think. So, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for watching. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching and participating. It was a fun day, and we will see you next time.